let's get started. So if you go ahead and open up Blender 2.5, you'll see that little splash screen.
Hey Chris.
Yep.
Is it a problem if I use the Blender from within the web Blender, which is 5.1?
2.51, yeah, I'm sure that's fine. Yeah, there might be subtle differences. There's a huge difference between 2.4 and 2.5. All the other 2.5 versions within each other are pretty much, from my understanding, pretty similar. So, so yeah, as long as it's 2.5 something, I think you're okay. So when we first open Blender 2.5, this is the screen that you're going to see. You should see something like this, and basically there's several windows. So one of the first things I just want to mention about Blender is that one of the rationales behind the design is that they use non-overlapping windows. So a lot of applications have windows. You open up a lot of windows and you have to kind of cycle through them. One of the things Blender has always tried to avoid is having overlapping windows that something gets hidden behind something else. So there are actually 3 windows, or actually 4 windows in the scene right now. And the main one is the 3D window right here. And this is where you do a lot of the object manipulation, of course, manipulating the 3-dimensional object. And then we have some other panels which we'll go through shortly. Okay. Also, I encourage you to ask questions if you have particular questions. If it's particular to your computer or hardware issues, we can try to resolve that during the Bring Your Own Data session so we don't hang everybody else up. Okay, so the first couple of things we want to do, especially if you're working on a laptop or a mouse that doesn't have 3 buttons. One of the main features of Blender is that it was originally designed to be used effectively with a 3-button mouse, but there's certainly ways to get around that. I've done most of my work on laptops, both PC and Mac. Okay, let's see. So the first thing we want to do is set some user preferences to make sure everybody's on board. So if we bring our cursor, can everybody see that? If we bring our cursor down here to this little box in the bottom left corner of the 3D window, this brings up the editor type selector, which allows us to choose what kind of window that we want to actually look at. So we're actually going to go up here to user preferences and change the 3D view window to user preferences. And now we have this entire window right here. So let's see. So there's a couple of things that actually when you first open up Blender, I suggest that you activate. One of them is called Emulate 3-Button Mouse. And I'll explain in a minute what that does. It basically allows you to simulate like a middle mouse button if you're using a 2-button mouse or a 1-button mouse, and emulate numpad, which will become useful if you don't have a separate numpad on the side, like you see on most larger keyboards with the numpad over to the side. And then one other thing that if you don't have a numpad also I find is effectively essential for working in Blender is to open up the shortcut key options. And so actually this is how it would look when you first open it up. We're going to have a series of options here under 3D view. We're going to open this up and then open up the 3D view global and expand that option. We're going to click Edit, and then we want to come down to Center View to Cursor and View Selected. So I would just recommend, I said in the tutorial that you could do Control-C. I'm actually going to recommend maybe doing Control-Period and Period here. And this way we can kind of emulate what they intended the users to be doing and to have once they, if they had a numpad. And that'll become evident why we do that in about a minute. Actually, with the default settings, I think you actually open up into the interface panel. So we just have to select over to Input and then set these settings so that we can be ready to go. One other thing I'd suggest that's just kind of like a visual aesthetic and makes it a little bit more fluid to work with is to change in the interface panel of the user preferences, change this smooth view option, which is I think set at 200 for default, to about 1,000. Or that's the highest you can go is 1,000. And I can explain what that does in a minute. So now that we have these settings set, we can go ahead and save as default. And I'm going to go back to this window selector and click on 3D view. and we'll be back in our 3D view window. Now, one of the now I'll go through the 3D window now and just talk about the basic components that you see. The default objects in your scene will be, you'll have 3 default objects. So you'll have a cube here in the center, which is now selected. I'm just going to deselect for a second. A camera and a lamp. So of course, in any 3D graphics program, you need at least 3 basic components to get a rendered image. You need an object, you need a light source, and you need a camera. You need the object to have something to view. You need a light source to light up the object, to then illuminate the object for the light to go into the camera, and you need the camera to receive it to actually give you the perspective. So you actually have to make very conscious decisions about where to place the camera, in what direction to orient it, and where to have your lighting set up. So these are the 3 basic objects. There are often many keystrokes that you can use, just single keys you can hit, shortcut keys, that enable you to access certain functionalities in the different window types. So it's important, first of all, that you have your cursor inside the window that you're working with in order to get these functions to work. So one thing I just want to point out over here to the left is something called the Object Tools panel. And you can actually toggle this on and off by hitting the T key. And that actually, expands your window if you want to just see nothing but the objects, or if you want to be able to do some manipulations with the buttons that are provided in here. And I'll talk briefly about that a little bit later. Also, if you hit the N key, you can bring up the Properties panel in the 3D window. And this gives you a number of access to a number of different properties of the objects that you're currently working with. Now, I'll just toggle N and T off so we have a full screen. And one of the nice features too is that there's a couple different ways to usually maximize whatever window you're currently working in. One of the easiest ways to do this is just to hit Shift Spacebar, and if that doesn't work, try Control Up or Control Down. Usually one of those options will work. And then what you can do is actually just completely maximize the space that you're the window that you're currently working in, so that's all you're looking at, and make it a simple view. And if we come back, I'll shift spacebar to toggle back into the multiple panel view. So as I said, there are multiple windows here that we can work with. I should just point out that the shift space works for any panel. So again, it's important where your cursor is when you actually hit the shift space. And you can open up any of these 4 windows. You can tell that it's a window because you see these little this little button window selector at the bottom left or upper left of each window that you're working in.